"She's finally cracking," my sister whispered, but not to anyone in the room. She whispered it to her phone to 3 million strangers. My phone vibrated, then again, then 30 times in one single minute. She didn't just cross boundaries, she sold my darkest pain for simple internet fame and bought jewelry with the profits. That Thanksgiving, I wept openly. By Monday, my agony was a viral joke. My mother left a toxic comment. My father gave it a thumbs up. Brianna tracked the likes. I didn't utter a single syllable for 8 grueling months. Yet when I finally uploaded my own 20-minute response, they called me frantically, pleading to erase it. It was too late. The entire county had seen the proof. I hadn't stayed quiet to hide. I went silent to investigate every lie, and the massive secrets I found completely exposed them. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's listening. My name is Audrey. I'm 31. I'm a registered nurse and a single mom to a 7-year-old girl named Layla. Now let me take you back to Thanksgiving Eve. The exact night my own sister decided my real, raw tears were worth more than my human dignity. The Prescott house always smells like sharp cinnamon and lemon pine sol every November 25th. That detail has not changed since I was a 6-year-old kid running down these halls. What has changed is where they decide to seat me. I pulled into the crunching gravel driveway at 5 o'clock sharp. Layla was fast asleep in her car seat, her little chest rising and falling softly. Beside her, a green bean casserole balanced dangerously on my passenger seat. I made it entirely from scratch. I even roasted the almonds myself, burning my fingertips just to get them perfectly golden. Maybe this year they'll actually taste it, I thought. Just once, let it be enough. I carried Layla heavy on one hip, the warm glass dish in my free hand, and pushed my shoulder through the heavy front door. Mom was standing strictly at the stove. She barely turned her head, her eyes instantly dropping to the casserole. "Oh, you made that again?" Her voice lacked any warmth. She took the dish right out of my hands and set it down on the back counter. She shoved it behind a bulky bread basket, deep in the far corner near the wall where shadows hid it. I swallowed hard. I have brought a homemade dish to every single holiday gathering for 4 long years. Not once has my food ever made it to the center of the dining table. 45 minutes later, the front door swung wide open. Brianna arrived. She did not bring a dish. She brought a bottle of crisp Cabernet wine and a fresh, bouncy salon blowout. Mom crossed the kitchen floor in 4 rapid steps, her face suddenly glowing. "At least one of my girls knows how to make an entrance," she announced loudly. She pulled my sister into a tight, lingering hug. It lasted long enough for me to carefully set Layla down on the floor and silently hang up our heavy winter coats all by myself. Dad was sitting deep in his worn recliner, watching a football game on mute. He offered me a stiff nod without ever lifting his eyes from his glowing phone screen. Layla immediately ran toward my mother. "Grandma," Mom flashed a tight 2-second smile, patted Layla's head and immediately spun away. "Brianna, get in here. I want a picture of us 3. Us 3. She meant herself, Brianna, and Dad. Layla and I were purposefully left entirely out of the frame. Again, I quietly took my assigned seat. It was the chair shoved nearest to the kitchen swinging door, the one with the uneven leg that always wobbles. While I gently straightened Layla's paper napkin on her lap, my eyes caught something. I noticed Brianna's phone perfectly propped up on the wooden spice shelf directly above the stove. The camera lens was facing the dining table. A tiny red dot was blinking. I foolishly assumed she was just filming the beautiful food spread for her Instagram followers. She wasn't. The golden turkey was only half carved when Mom suddenly set down her silver fork. She aimed her gaze directly across the table at me like a loaded weapon. "So, Audrey, any updates? Seeing anyone?" I kept my eyes glued to Layla's half-empty plate. My heart started a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. "I'm just focused on my nursing work and Layla right now, Mom." She let out a long, heavy sigh. She made it sound like I had just handed her a terminal medical diagnosis. "I just want you to be happy, like Brianna." Brianna did not miss a single beat. "Mom, not everyone peaks at the exact same time in life." My sister elegantly tilted her expensive wine glass, light catching the dark red liquid. "Some people just don't." A laugh followed. It was a small, private, mocking sound shared exclusively between the two of them. Dad finally cleared his throat. They were his very first words of the entire evening. "Your mother is just trying to help, Audrey. Don't make this into a thing. His tone sounded perfectly neutral. Except it wasn't. Every single time my father says, "Don't make this into a thing," what he actually means is, "Stop making us feel uncomfortable with your quiet pain." I gripped my knife and began cutting Layla's turkey into tiny, safe pieces. My hands were perfectly steady. "I can do this," I told myself. "Breathe in, breathe out. I survive this every single year." But then Mom casually leaned back in her chair. She spoke as if she were simply commenting on the chilly weather outside. "You know, your cousin Rebecca just got a huge promotion at her firm. She and her husband are building a custom house." She let the silence stretch out, twisting the invisible knife. "I'm just saying, Audrey, it is never too late to finally get your life together." Something vital deep inside my chest simply snapped in half. I bit down hard on the soft inside of my cheek until I tasted hot, metallic copper blood. I desperately tried to swallow the violent scream burning like acid in my throat. I didn't yell. I didn't argue back. I just completely shut down. My vision instantly blurred with hot water. My throat locked into a painful knot. Thick, heavy tears slid rapidly down my pale face before I could even lift a hand to catch them. Layla's warm, tiny hand gently touched my shaking arm. "Mommy?" I quickly scooped my daughter up against my chest, mumbled a pathetic "excuse me," and practically ran to the dark back porch. The freezing November air slapped my wet face. I stood out there trembling, holding my little girl tight against my racing heart, just fighting to pull oxygen into my lungs. From inside the warm, bright house, I heard Mom's voice muffled through the glass. It was low, smug, and deeply satisfied. "See? This is exactly what I mean. Every holiday. Every single one." The red dot on Brianna's phone kept quietly blinking in the background, but I had absolutely no idea that tiny pulsing light was about to burn my entire world to the ground. 2 days after the Thanksgiving disaster, Saturday morning sunlight spilled across my kitchen. Layla sat eating frosted cereal, happily humming a sweet tune from her favorite cartoon. It was a perfectly normal, quiet moment. Then, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Delilah, my oldest friend. I answered with a smile, but her voice was tight, thin with panic. "Audrey, have you checked Brianna's page today?" I hadn't. I opened the app with one trembling hand while absent-mindedly stirring Layla's cold orange juice with the other. The footage loaded instantly. Staring back at me was a massive thumbnail of my own ruined face. I was mid-sob, dark mascara violently smeared under my eyes, my mouth hanging half open in raw agony. Brianna had carefully edited a polished introduction. There she sat in her expensive car, bathed in a soft beauty filter, using her most gentle, sympathetic voice. "My little sister has always deeply struggled," Brianna told the camera, looking tragically sad. "We try so incredibly hard as a family to support her, but this holiday, she finally broke down completely. It was absolutely heartbreaking to watch." Then came the actual footage. 52 agonizing seconds of me weeping openly at the dinner table, Layla's tiny, innocent hand reaching out to touch my shaking arm, me stumbling blindly toward the dark porch. Below the clip, Brianna's typed caption read, "The family disappointment finally cracked. 3 million views, 18,000 comments." My stomach plummeted into a bottomless pit as I scrolled. Thousands of strangers were either deeply pitying me or viciously mocking my pain. "Girl needs serious therapy, not turkey," one user sneered. "Classic middle child energy," another joked. "Someone get this unstable woman a boyfriend. LOL. Then my eyes locked onto something much worse. It was Mom. She had left a comment from her real, public account, proudly displaying her full name and her smiling church directory profile photo. "Maybe now she will finally change," Mom wrote for the world to see. A mother can only hope. 4,100 strangers liked her cruel words. And Dad, his sole contribution was a single, silent thumbs up on the post itself. A quiet, devastating endorsement of my public humiliation. My hand tightened around the device until the hard plastic case actually cracked under the pressure. Layla looked up from her bright cereal bowl, her big brown eyes wide with sudden worry. "Mommy, why are you squeezing your phone so hard?" I forced my lungs to work. I carefully set the screen face down on the cool marble counter. A screaming, wild part of my brain wanted to call Brianna immediately. I wanted to scream until my voice gave out, report the devastating post, file a police report, do absolutely anything to stop the bleeding. But I didn't. I poured Layla's juice. I methodically wiped down the clean counter. I pasted on a bright, fake smile and said, "We are going to the sunny park today, baby." That night, long after Layla was safely asleep in her bed, I opened the glowing screen in the dark. I didn't call a single person. Instead, I coldly screenshotted everything. Every vicious like, every fake sympathetic reply, every digital dagger thrust into my back. Tuesday morning arrived fast. At 7:15 a.m., I swiped my worn badge to enter Harrison County Hospital, doing the exact same routine I have done for 4 proud years. My blue scrubs were neatly pressed, my hair tightly tied back, my photo ID clipped perfectly straight. But the sterile white hallway felt dangerously different today. 2 nurses standing at the main station snapped their heads up when I walked past. One quickly darted her eyes away. The other offered me a tight, wincing smile that landed somewhere sickly between deep pity and heavy embarrassment. Inside the quiet break room, while I poured black coffee, someone behind me whispered to a colleague. I only caught one sharp word: video. By 10 o'clock, a patient's anxious wife sitting in the waiting area leaned over to another nurse. She did not lower her voice enough. "Isn't that the exact girl from that crazy internet clip? The crying one?" My pulse hammered a frantic, deafening rhythm inside my ears. But I kept walking. I charted complex vitals. I changed difficult IV bags. I did my demanding job perfectly. At exactly 1 p.m., my waist pager buzzed aggressively. Martha Clark's office. Martha is our tough charge nurse. She has spent 20 grueling years running this medical floor. She is the kind of fierce woman who calls arrogant doctors by their first names and always gets away with it. When I stepped inside, she quietly closed the heavy wooden door. "Sit down, Audrey." 4 printed emails sat on her desk. 4 supposedly concerned local community members had written directly to the high-level hospital administration, actively questioning my emotional stability and my overall fitness to care for sick patients. Martha slid the crisp pages across her polished desk toward me. "I know this is absolute garbage," she stated firmly, her eyes full of quiet fury. "But I have to officially document it. Hospital policy." I read the printed words. The language was deliberately vague, highly performative, and dripping with fake concern for my well-being and professional standards. Not a single message mentioned the viral post directly. They didn't have to. The hidden threat was crystal clear. After my grueling shift finally ended, I sat frozen inside my cold car in the sprawling parking lot. The engine remained off. Both hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. I called Delilah. "They are trying to take my nursing job," I whispered into the receiver, the raw terror finally leaking out. Delilah was dead quiet for one heavy second before replying, "No, Audrey. They are trying to take away your voice." I slowly looked down at the dashboard. Taped right above the speedometer was a colorful photo of Layla. She had a gap-toothed grin, messy pigtails, and blue finger paint smeared across her little chin. I opened the blank notes app on my phone. I began to type. I was absolutely not going to lose my hard-earned medical license just because my toxic relatives decided my silent agony was great internet entertainment. But as I sat there planning my quiet defense, I didn't realize the town of Harrison had already put me on a brutal trial, and the worst punishment they were secretly preparing wasn't aimed at my career. It was aimed squarely at my innocent daughter. The first week of December rolled in with a bitter chill. I sat alone at my tiny kitchen table long after Layla was safely tucked into bed. Spread out before me under the harsh overhead light was the unforgiving math of survival. If the administration actually fired me from Harrison County Hospital over those fake emails, the nearest clinic was 30 minutes west in Greeley. That commute meant $300 extra a month just in gas. I would have to find a brand new babysitter, ripping Layla away from the familiar woman 4 blocks down. Worse, my little girl had just started first grade here. She finally had a best friend, Ophelia, a sweet kid who shared her frosted animal crackers every day at lunch. I cannot move, I realized, staring blindly at the electric bill. I can't afford to fight them in a long legal battle, but I absolutely cannot afford to run away. The invisible walls of my hometown started closing in much faster than I could brace for the impact. That Sunday at the crowded grocery store, Valerie, the powerful head of the school PTA and my mother's right-hand woman at church, deliberately blocked my shopping cart with hers near the apples. She flashed a massive, sickeningly sweet smile and placed a soft, manicured hand on my tense arm. "Audrey, honey," she cooed loudly, making sure the next aisle heard her. "I saw that awful video. Your poor mama is just so incredibly worried about your fragile mental state. Then Valerie's bright smile tightened into a razor-thin line of pure malice. In fact, a few of us concerned mothers were talking. Maybe little Layla should sit out of the upcoming neighborhood playdates. Just until you get yourself stabilized. My breath hitched painfully. She was actively weaponizing the other neighborhood mothers against a child. She was deliberately isolating my innocent 7-year-old just to force me into submission. You should really call your mother, Valerie whispered, her eyes turning cold. Thank you, Valerie, I replied flatly. I grabbed my metal cart and kept walking. I did not bother to defend myself. I have learned the hard way that explaining your pain to cruel people is just another pathetic form of begging. Tuesday morning arrived with a fresh sting. During Layla's school drop-off, I unbuckled her car seat and walked her to the bustling main entrance. Another parent, a wealthy woman I instantly recognized from the PTA board, spotted me from the crosswalk. She quickly turned to the mom standing beside her and whispered something nasty behind her steaming coffee cup. They both stared right at me, their eyes full of deep judgment, before quickly looking away. That was the exact moment I finally understood the brutal reality. In a tight-knit town like Harrison, Brianna's viral video wasn't just entertaining internet content. It was a concrete verdict. 3 million total strangers watched me break down in tears. But it was the 9,000 people living in this specific zip code who would decide what my tears actually meant. And my own mother had happily signed that horrific verdict with her real name, her smiling face, and 4,000 likes. I buckled Layla safely back into the car for my quiet drive to work. She cheerfully chattered away about Ophelia and a fuzzy green caterpillar they had discovered on the playground. I listened to her sweet, innocent voice, and a heavy, dark realization settled over my bruised heart. My total silence isn't protecting me anymore. It is only protecting the monsters who hurt me. By mid-December, my glowing phone held 4 heavy, unread messages. I refused to answer any of them. The very first was a long voicemail from Mom. Her tone was perfectly measured and coldly artificial, the exact way she sounds when she has heavily rehearsed her lines in the bathroom mirror. Audrey, this dramatic silent treatment is extremely childish. The video got people talking. So what? Brianna didn't mean anything malicious by it. Call your mother immediately. The second notification was a shiny new story Brianna had posted. It featured a faded childhood photo of us at ages 9 and 13, wearing matching pastel Easter dresses, squinting brightly into the blinding sun. Her typed caption read, "Missing my little sis today. Family isn't always perfect, but love is love." 900 strangers left glowing comments praising my sister's incredible maturity and endless grace. Dozens of people called me a dramatic, ungrateful brat. One user wrote, "She is so incredibly lucky to have a sister who still cares enough to try." The third message was a cowardly text from Dad. 5 simple words. "Come to dinner Saturday. Mom misses you." There was zero apology. No mention whatsoever of the humiliating video. Absolute denial that millions of strangers had watched his youngest daughter sob in agony while he sat uselessly in his leather recliner and said absolutely nothing. I read all 3 notifications while sitting on my worn living room couch. Layla was fast asleep against my aching shoulder, a colorful picture book still resting open on her small lap. I didn't type a single reply. I just set the phone face down on the soft cushion, gently carried my daughter to her warm bed, and read her another magical chapter about a brave rabbit who builds her own safe house. But right before I turned off the glowing bedside lamp, I noticed a tiny glaring detail in Brianna's fake nostalgic post. She was wearing a brand new expensive bracelet in her recent selfie. It had a chunky rose gold clasp, the exact high-end style I had admired in the sparkling window at Majesty Jewelry downtown. It cost $400 minimum. Brianna only worked part-time answering phones at a local real estate office. Her dying social media channel only had 15,000 followers. That was nowhere near enough income to pay for luxury jewelry. I didn't know exactly what it meant yet. I just filed that shiny image away in the dark back of my mind, right next to the damning screenshots I had saved the morning after Thanksgiving. Some ugly things only make complete sense when you look backward. By the end of December, I finally made a firm decision. It felt less like a master plan, and much more like taking my first deep breath of clean oxygen. I went into my phone settings and completely turned off every single notification from the Prescott family. I deliberately chose not to block their numbers. I wanted their toxic messages to exist. I needed them to pile up, to become a permanent, undeniable record of exactly who reached out and the poison they said. I just stopped letting the sudden ping of their names interrupt my fragile peace. That same evening, Delilah came over carrying hot takeout containers of spicy pad thai and a heavy question. "So," she asked, setting down paper plates, "what is the actual plan?" I handed her a silver fork. "I don't have a grand plan yet. I just know I am entirely done reacting to their abuse." Delilah suddenly stopped chewing her noodles. She quickly pulled her silver laptop from her tote bag, her face draining entirely of healthy color. "Audrey, I didn't want to show you this ugly mess until I was absolutely sure." She slowly turned the bright screen toward my face. It was a live GoFundMe donation page. Brianna's face, looking tragically tearful and exhausted, was the massive banner image. The bold title read, "Help my sister get emergency psychiatric care." The total money raised so far, $8,500. "She didn't just publicly humiliate you," Delilah whispered, her voice shaking with pure disgust. "She monetized your pain. She completely grifted 3 million people." Suddenly, that $400 rose gold bracelet from Majesty made perfect, sickening sense. My older sister wasn't just a cruel bully desperate for attention. She was a literal fraud. Delilah watched my frozen face for a long, tense moment. "Okay, so what are you doing now?" I looked away from the screen, my heart turning into solid ice. "I am living," and I did. For the very first time in years, my quiet weeks finally had a peaceful shape that didn't bend painfully around someone else's impossible expectations. I woke up early. I happily packed Layla's little lunchbox, turkey sandwich, crisp apple slices, a handwritten sticky note that always said, "You are my favorite human." I drove to the hospital. I worked my grueling shift with pride. I picked Layla up, cooked a warm dinner, read her stories, and slept deeply. Repeat. There was no screaming drama, no guilt-tripping phone calls at 9 o'clock at night, no tense Saturday dinners where my wooden chair wobbled and my homemade food sat ignored in the dark corner. No more desperately trying to earn a loving place in a family I was never actually given. December slowly passed, fading into freezing January. One frosty morning, while driving my usual route to work, I passed the towering brick building of First Bethany Church. The large white marquee out front displayed crisp black letters. Spring fundraiser, April 14th. All are welcome. I casually glanced at it the exact same way you might glance at a faded billboard for a bad restaurant you will never visit. Then, I pressed the gas pedal and drove on. I didn't know it yet, but 8 months, that is exactly how long I needed to heal, to refuse to forgive, to refuse to forget, and to finally pay close attention to the shadows. But that simple church sign held the exact date where my mother's perfect holy facade would finally meet the absolute devastation of the truth. February finally cracked through the long winter. It marked 3 solid months of absolute silence from my end. And then, something incredibly interesting started happening to Brianna's sparkling social media channel. It slowly began to starve. Delilah, my ever-loyal friend, quietly kept tabs on it. Not obsessively, just the cautious way a smart person monitors a dark storm that has already violently passed your house, but might suddenly circle back to strike again. She casually texted me a glaring screenshot late one Tuesday night while I was folding Layla's warm laundry. "Brianna's total engagement is down 50% since her viral Thanksgiving stunt," Delilah's message read. I zoomed in on the attached image, Brianna's latest, highly produced video, boldly titled 5 Easy Weeknight Dinners for Busy Women, had only managed to scrape together 87 views. 87. My sister used to effortlessly pull 5-figure viewer counts off my raw, public tears alone, but without my painful family drama to exploit. Brianna's shiny content was basically just expensive wallpaper. It was pleasant, entirely forgettable, and instantly scrollable. The brutal algorithm had stopped caring about her perfect hair and clean kitchen, so desperate for a hit of attention, she reached back into the past. A brand new, carefully curated post magically appeared on her struggling feed. It was a fuzzy, nostalgic throwback picture of Brianna and me at a dusty elementary school carnival. Bright pink cotton candy stained our tiny t-shirts. Our small arms wrapped tightly around each other's thin shoulders in apparent sisterly joy. Her typed caption practically bled fake sorrow. "Some people tragically choose silence over their own family, but I will always choose love." 200 fresh comments immediately flooded in, most of them eagerly asking the exact same hungry questions. What happened next? Did your crying sister ever respond? Is she okay now? I stared at the screen, my heart heavy but surprisingly steady. She is fishing, I realized with cold clarity, and I am the juicy bait she is desperately missing. Then came her direct private message. It was time-stamped exactly at 10:35 p.m., slipping onto my locked screen like a thief in the night. People are asking about you constantly, Audrey. Can we please just talk like adults? I will take the ugly Thanksgiving video down tonight if you just promise to come to our Easter dinner. I read her pathetic bargaining chip while lying quietly in my own bed. Down the dark hallway, Layla's small nightlight glowed a soft, safe pink through the slight crack in her bedroom door. I did not type a single letter in response. The very next morning, before I even poured my first cup of strong coffee, I quickly checked the original devastating video on her page. The family disappointment finally cracked was still proudly up for the entire world to see, 3.2 million views and climbing. She absolutely did not take it down. She had disgustingly offered the mere promise of its removal as cheap currency, desperately hoping my fear would force me to buy her fake peace. Later that afternoon at the busy hospital, Martha briefly stopped me in the brightly lit hallway outside patient room 4. "Hey Audrey," she said softly, her tough eyes softening. "Those nasty complaint emails from the community. We haven't received anything new in 4 solid weeks. I honestly think your family finally ran out of cheap ammunition to fire." I nodded slowly, gripping a fresh stack of clean towels. Good. My sister hadn't offered to take the humiliating video down because she was actually sorry for destroying my peace. She had only offered to take it down because her precious vanity numbers were rapidly dropping. There is a massive fundamental difference between genuine remorse and selfish panic, and I finally knew it. March blew in with heavy spring rain that made 5 entire months of total quiet on my end, but my mother Joyce hadn't been quiet at all. Delilah heard the nasty rumors first. They trickled down from Rebecca, an old high school friend who tragically still attended First Bethany Church every Sunday. My mother had started aggressively telling a brand new story during coffee hour, not the messy, honest one, hers. "My youngest, troubled daughter has completely cut us off without a single word," she tragically told the Wealthy Women's Fellowship Circle. Delicately dabbing her dry eyes with a monogrammed tissue she kept carefully folded in her pastel cardigan sleeve. "We honestly don't know what we possibly did to deserve this cruelty. We pray for her dark soul every single night. It is truly the hardest burden a loving mother can ever go through." She conveniently forgot to mention the brutal viral video. She conveniently didn't mention the vicious, public comment she gleefully left for 3 million strangers to read. She completely erased the $8,500 that Brianna had happily stolen from the internet in my bruised name. My mother expertly built a flawless, holy version of events where she was the tragically abandoned, perfect mother, and I was simply the cold, ungrateful, crazy child. And her brilliant, tearful performance worked flawlessly. The heavy, suffocating guilt cards started arriving almost immediately. Dozens of handwritten, pastel-colored envelopes were tightly tucked into my small apartment mailbox every single day. "Your sweet mama loves you so much, Audrey," one flowing script read. "Do not throw your blessed family away over a silly misunderstanding. Family is everything. Please, just come home and apologize." One particularly aggressive woman even mailed me a thick, heavy hardcover book titled "Boundaries That Break Families: When Foolish Estrangement Goes Too Far." I silently stacked the endless envelopes and the heavy book on my clean kitchen counter. I didn't even bother to open most of them after the very first exhausting week. Delilah called me one evening, deeply frustrated and angry on my behalf. "Audrey, she is literally turning the entire town of Harrison into her personal army of flying monkeys. You have to say something to stop her. Let her do it." I replied calmly. I was standing at the warm stove, gently stirring a bubbling pot of creamy mac and cheese for Layla's dinner. "I am simply not ready yet." Delilah paused on the phone. "Yet?" I paused too, the wooden spoon hovering over the hot pot. It was the very first time I had used that specific, heavy word instead of a flat, permanent no. Even my own brain didn't fully understand the quiet shift happening inside my chest. But something massive, dark, and heavy was finally shifting. Every single pastel card, every hushed whisper in the grocery store aisles, every sympathetic, patronizing head tilt from strangers actively confirmed what I had already suspected in my bones for years. My toxic family didn't just want me to remain silent and obedient. They actively wanted me entirely erased. They wanted me permanently replaced with a convenient, messy character they had written themselves. The troubled daughter, the lost soul, the crazy one we generously pray for. I was not that pathetic character, and staring at the bubbling water, I was finally starting to think it was about time I loudly said so to the entire world. But right before I could figure out exactly how to speak my truth, Brianna made a catastrophic, unforgivable mistake, and this time she didn't aim her venom at me. She aimed her camera directly at the one person I would burn the entire earth to protect. Early April hit like a physical blow. The quiet 5 months I'd spent meticulously building my small, safe life shattered completely. Brianna casually crossed the exact line I didn't even know I had permanently drawn in the sand. I was standing in Layla's softly lit bedroom, gently brushing the tangles out of her dark hair right before bed. My phone lit up on her small dresser. It was Delilah. There was no friendly greeting attached to her message, no context whatsoever, just a single, glowing blue link. My stomach plummeted. I cautiously clicked it open. It was Brianna's massive public page. Staring back at me, bright and entirely unprotected, was a gorgeous high-resolution photo of Layla, my tiny Layla. She was laughing joyfully in a yellow sunflower dress I had happily bought for her last spring at a local boutique. I instantly recognized the shot. It had been pulled directly from the private, shared family digital album that I had foolishly forgotten to permanently revoke their access to after that devastating Thanksgiving night. Below my daughter's innocent face, Brianna's typed caption read, "At least one incredibly good, pure thing came from my troubled little sister. Miss you so much, Layla Bug." 700 comments instantly flooded the horrific post. Total strangers were actively dissecting my beautiful baby. "So sweet of you, Brianna. You're such a good, loving aunt. That precious baby deserves a stable family environment." 700 strangers were looking directly at my beautiful daughter, actively commenting on her small face, happily sharing her digital image across the cold internet, because Brianna desperately needed fresh, dramatic content to feed her starving algorithm, and my precious child was incredibly convenient to exploit. I slowly sat down on the very edge of Layla's narrow bed. She was already snuggled deep under her soft blankets, her dark eyelashes fluttering half-closed in sleep. "Mommy?" she murmured sleepily, her voice tiny in the quiet room. "Why does Aunt Brianna's big phone always point right at us?" I reached out with a trembling hand and gently smoothed her soft hair away from her forehead. "It won't anymore, baby," I promised softly. "Never again." I quietly closed her bedroom door behind me. I practically ran to my kitchen counter and grabbed my phone. I dialed Delilah's number so fast my thumb slipped. My hands were shaking violently with pure adrenaline, but when I finally spoke, my voice was dead calm. "Delilah, she just used my innocent daughter for cheap likes." Delilah didn't hesitate for a single second. "Okay, Audrey, what exactly do you want to do to them?" "Everything." That exact night, long after Layla's breathing had gone completely slow and perfectly steady through the crackling baby monitor, I opened my silver laptop under the harsh glare of the kitchen table light. I created a blank, stark white digital document. And then, I simply began typing down absolutely everything I intimately knew about my so-called perfect family. Everything I had spent 31 long years pretending I didn't see. I typed out the exact mileage on my father's old truck odometer that mysteriously never ever matched his innocent fishing trips. I typed out the shocking hidden details of the brutal arrest that miraculously disappeared from the county records 3 years ago. I typed out the massive credit card statement I had discovered desperately hidden inside a wrinkled bag of old children's clothes just weeks prior. 3 heavy, devastating secrets belonging to 3 proud people who had comfortably built their entire respectable lives on the absolute arrogant assumption that I would never ever speak my truth aloud. "You can brutally humiliate me," I thought furiously as my fingers flew across the keyboard. "You can happily call me a massive disappointment to the entire town. You can film my agonizing tears for cheap entertainment, but you absolutely do not get to use my child." Let me pause this story here for one honest second. When I first saw Layla's beautiful photo plastered all over Brianna's massive public page, I didn't feel blind, screaming anger right away. I felt physically cold, ice cold, because I suddenly knew, with terrifying clarity, that if my sister was eagerly willing to use a 7-year-old child for a quick burst of internet likes, there was absolutely no moral limit she wouldn't cross next. So let me ask you out there a serious question. Why exactly do you think Brianna specifically chose to post Layla's picture instead of continuing to aggressively target me directly? I would really love to hear your honest take on that twisted psychology. Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. And if this dark story is starting to feel terrifyingly familiar to your own life, stay right here, Because what happens next is the exact moment I started seeing absolutely everything hidden in plain sight. By mid-April, I intentionally drove back to my parents' quiet, familiar house on a breezy Thursday afternoon. I absolutely was not going back to reconcile or apologize. I was going to quickly pick up a heavy cardboard box of Layla's old baby clothes that Mom had generously offered me months ago, back when she still arrogantly thought she could buy my continued silence with cheap, worn hand-me-downs. Mom was safely occupied at her weekly church Bible study group downtown. Dad's dusty pickup truck sat parked in the long driveway, but Mom had casually mentioned earlier that he would be happily out at Belmont Lake like he always was on Thursdays. The front door was completely unlocked. Small, trusting towns always are. I quickly grabbed the bulky box from the dark hallway closet and carried it straight out to my car, but on my way past Dad's large truck, I did something I've automatically done since I was a clumsy 17-year-old kid when he first taught me to drive out in the empty church parking lot. Pure habit. Complete reflex. I casually glanced directly at the digital odometer glowing through the truck window. The bright green number instantly stopped me dead in my tracks. I carefully set the heavy box down on the warm metal hood and looked closely again. I had absent-mindedly pulled the very last mileage reading from his detailed handwritten maintenance log kept in the glove box just 4 short weeks ago when I was last here picking up Layla's spare booster seat. The glaring difference was massive. 310 miles in one single weekend trip. Belmont Lake is exactly 15 miles away from this driveway. That is exactly 30 miles round trip, maximum. I stood completely frozen there in the afternoon sun, my trembling hand resting flat on the warm hood of his truck, doing simple mental arithmetic that certainly doesn't require a calculator to solve. 310 extra miles meant he was driving exactly 155 miles each way. That equates to roughly 2.5 hours of solid highway driving in one single direction. Where exactly does a happily retired man secretly go? Every single other weekend, driving 2.5 hours away, only to come back home smelling strongly like he's actually been outdoors all day? I pulled out my phone and quickly snapped a clear time-stamped photo of the glaring odometer. I didn't know exactly what it meant yet. Not yet. Layla was fast asleep in her car seat behind me. I silently drove us back home with the dusty box of old baby clothes resting heavily on the passenger side seat, and a terrifyingly high number safely stored in my phone's camera roll that absolutely did not match any innocent weekend fishing trip. I genuinely didn't want to find anything bad. But once you finally start paying close attention to the dark cracks in the flawless walls, you simply can't unsee what's been violently hiding there all along. Late that same April night, Delilah and I sat closely together at her messy kitchen table, her silver laptop humming open between us. We were furiously researching exactly how to legally report the unauthorized, public posting of a minor's private photo on a major social media platform because of Layla's violated privacy. Delilah expertly pulled up the complex county court records portal. She rapidly typed Brianna's full legal name into the search bar just to check if there was any strong legal precedent for forced image removal in our specific jurisdiction. The spinning search icon loaded, and it shockingly returned a harsh result neither of us had ever expected to uncover. Brianna Marie Prescott. DUI arrest. Exactly 3 years ago. 2:15 a.m. Blood alcohol content of 0.16. Nearly double the legal limit in the state of Tennessee. Delilah slowly scrolled down the glowing page, her eyes widening in disbelief. Case status, officially dismissed. Official reason, insufficient evidence. She looked up at me, her face utterly pale. Audrey, a Bay AC of 0.16 and it was dismissed for insufficient evidence? That is absolutely not how a massive DUI works in this state. I leaned back heavily against my hard wooden chair. A blurry, distant memory suddenly violently surfaced. Incredibly sharp now. Exactly 3 years ago, there was one strange, tense week when Dad made more hushed, frantic phone calls than I had heard him make in an entire year. Frantic, urgent conversations paced out on the dark back porch. A horribly tense, silent Saturday family dinner. Nobody ever explained why. Then, miraculously, everything went perfectly back to normal the very next day. I didn't ask what happened. I was taught never to ask questions. Delilah's fingers flew across the keyboard, typing another rapid search query. The powerful sheriff of Harrison County, Lawrence Dawson. She quickly cross-referenced Larry Dawson with my father, George Prescott. Same graduating class at Harrison High School. Same worn wooden pew at First Bethany Church every single Sunday. Same sweaty amateur softball team every sweltering summer for the past 25 long years. Audrey, Delilah said very slowly, her voice practically a whisper. Your dad's best oldest fishing buddy is literally the active sheriff of this entire town. And my sister's massive illegal DUI just magically disappeared. I finished, staring blankly at the bright screen. The official case number, the exact glaring date, the sky-high BAC reading that absolutely should have meant a permanently suspended license and mandatory grueling classes at the bare minimum. This isn't just your perfect older sister being dramatic and messy online, Delilah stated coldly. This is a massive generational pattern of toxic abuse. They aggressively protect each other. Every single one of them covers for the others. But I had no idea that the final, undeniable piece of their ugly puzzle was about to literally walk right through the hospital doors and hand me the exact weapon I needed to destroy them all. 2 short days later, the final, missing puzzle piece literally walked right through the automatic sliding doors of my hospital. It was a quiet Tuesday night, right near the exhausting end of my 12-hour shift. A thin girl swallowed up in a massive, oversized gray hoodie suddenly blocked the narrow break room doorway. It was Chloe. She was Brianna's former ex-best friend, the exact girl who had mysteriously dropped completely off the map 3 years ago. She looked absolutely terrified, her wide eyes darting frantically over her shoulder like she was actively being hunted. I was sitting right there in the passenger seat, Audrey. Chloe breathed out, her chest heaving. The exact night Brianna got her massive DUI, Chloe violently shoved a crumpled, faded piece of paper directly into my frozen hands. It wasn't dismissed for insufficient evidence, she whispered, her voice cracking with years of held-back rage. Your powerful dad personally called Sheriff Dawson from the police station lobby. Dawson illegally pulled the official breathalyzer calibration log right out of the active file, so the judge legally had to throw the entire case out. But I secretly kept a copy. She pointed a shaking finger at the wrinkled paper. Here is the original, signed log. Brianna entirely ruined my young life that night just to casually save her own. Please, Audrey, use it. My blood ran instantly cold. A deep chill settled perfectly into my bones. This is real corruption, I realized, staring at the stamped ink. I didn't just have dark suspicions anymore. I held the absolute, undeniable proof right in my hands. I gently closed my silver laptop, treating it like a highly fragile bomb. Like the dangerous truth inside it might accidentally shatter if I moved too fast. It wouldn't. Truth doesn't break that easily. Only lies do. By early May, I was quietly sitting on the floor, sorting through that dusty cardboard box of Layla's old baby clothes I had picked up from Mom's house 3 weeks ago. Neatly folded deep inside the front pocket of a tiny pair of pink corduroy overalls, pressed completely flat like someone had hidden it in a blind panic, was a thick credit card statement. The name printed at the top was Joyce R. Prescott. The private account ended in $5,582. The glowing statement balance at the bottom, $52,418. I sat frozen on Layla's soft bedroom rug, entirely surrounded by tiny pastel shirts and mismatched baby socks. And I carefully read every single damning line. Endless luxury department stores, pricey home decor catalogs, a massive recurring monthly donation of $300 straight to First Bethany Church, a desperate cash advance for exactly $6,000. The brutal interest charges were rapidly stacking up like heavy lead bricks. My parents survived strictly on Dad's fixed county retirement pension of exactly $3,500 a month. This crushing balance was nearly 15 entire months of their total income, and Dad had absolutely no idea. He couldn't possibly know because if he did, the heavy, suffocating silence hanging between them in that dark house would sound entirely different. I grew up tiptoeing through that exact house. I intimately know the unique texture of every single quiet room. I slowly carried the horrific financial statement out to my kitchen table. I carefully laid it down directly beside the glowing photo of Dad's suspicious truck odometer, right next to the printed proof of Brianna's dismissed illegal DUI. 3 manila folders, 3 highly respected people, 3 incredibly dark secrets. I grabbed my phone and called Delilah. I desperately need your help, I told her, my voice eerily calm. Not to fight them back, just to finally tell the truth. She was completely quiet for 4 long seconds. When? Soon. I just need to check one more thing. That night, I lay flat in my bed and stared blankly at the dark ceiling. The small apartment was perfectly silent except for the soothing sound of Layla's steady breathing drifting through the baby monitor. 3 massive secrets carefully held by 3 selfish people who have proudly spent decades using my forced silence as the thick mortar holding their perfect brick walls together. My deep pain, my agonizing tears, my daughter's innocent face. all ruthlessly repurposed, just to keep their holy public image flawlessly intact. The real question isn't whether I should finally speak, I thought, closing my tired eyes. The only question is when, and exactly how, and whether I can actually survive doing it without becoming the vicious monster they already told the entire world I am. Late April, month 5 of my silence. First Bethany Church proudly held its annual massive spring fundraiser, smoked pulled pork, a crowded silent auction, dozens of metal folding chairs set up on the green lawn. Around 250 local people attended. I absolutely was not there, but Delilah was, simply because her friend Rebecca had saved her a hot plate of food. Delilah started furiously texting me in real time. 7:15 p.m. Your mom just confidently walked up onto the main stage. 7:16 p.m. She is actively crying into the microphone. 7:17 p.m. She just asked the entire congregation to pray for you by name. I immediately called Delilah. She answered in a frantic whisper, tightly cupping her phone to block the wind. In the chaotic background, I clearly heard my own mother's weeping voice booming through a massive speaker system, amplified across the entire packed church lawn. I want to humbly ask everyone here to please pray for our broken family. Mom sobbed beautifully. My youngest daughter has tragically turned completely away from us. She stubbornly won't answer any of our loving calls. We honestly don't know what we possibly did to deserve this cruelty. We pray for her dark soul every single night. It is truly the hardest burden a loving mother can ever go through. 250 people respectfully bowed their heads. My given name hung heavily in the humid May air like toxic, choking smoke. Lord, please bring my lost baby home. She is so deeply lost, and we are just a simple family that loves far too much. My stomach churned with pure disgust. Then Delilah sent one final, incoming text. It was a live screenshot perfectly captured from Brianna's public social media live stream of the highly emotional prayer moment. Brianna stood right beside Mom on the wooden stage, one supportive hand resting gently on Mom's shaking shoulder, her own eyes glistening perfectly with fake tears. But down in the bottom corner of the digital frame, Delilah had caught it. Brianna's other hand was casually holding her glowing phone right at waist level. She was actively checking her live viewer count. She was beautifully crying for the church crowd and greedily counting her internet numbers at the exact same time. I sat alone in my dark kitchen, the phone pressed hard to my burning ear, quietly listening to 250 strangers pray for a pathetic version of me that simply does not exist. The tragically lost daughter, the deeply troubled one, the crazy girl who cruelly turned her back on a flawless family that just loves too much. Not one single person in that massive crowd had ever heard my side of the story. Not one of them had ever bothered to ask. I quietly hung up the phone. I opened my silver laptop, the screen illuminating the dark room. I slowly added a brand new, 4th digital folder to my desktop. I titled it, Church. The fake holy walls surrounding my toxic family were getting dangerously thinner by the second. They just didn't know it yet. But cornered animals are always the most dangerous, and I had absolutely no idea they were about to aim their sharpest, deadliest claws directly at my innocent daughter. The agonizing week right after the massive church fundraiser, the tight-knit town of Harrison aggressively closed in on me. The heavy, judging air felt thick, practically suffocating my lungs every single time I simply walked out of my front door. At the crowded local grocery store, 3 entirely separate, random people deliberately stopped my shopping cart right in the bright aisles. The very first was a tiny older woman wearing a bright floral blouse. She actually reached out and firmly grabbed my cold hand before I could even flinch away. Your precious mama was just so incredibly brave up there on that stage, Audrey, she whispered intensely, her eyes shining with absolute conviction. The second encounter was a tall older man with silver hair who sat prominently on the church deacon board. He slowly shook his head at me, right next to the fresh produce section, his voice dripping with heavy, condescending pity. Honey, life is just far too short to hold on to this ugly, sinful grudge. The third person didn't even bother to stop walking. She simply squeezed my tense shoulder hard as she brushed past me in the dairy aisle and loudly whispered, I am praying so hard for your soul. She said it exactly like I had just been officially diagnosed with something horribly terminal and highly contagious. Through every single suffocating interaction, I forced a tight, polite smile. I nodded slightly. I kept my head down and my shopping cart moving fast. At the busy hospital later that afternoon, a young respiratory therapist I had literally never spoken to outside of rapid shift changes leaned casually into the quiet break room doorway while I was eating my cold sandwich. Hey, she said, her voice entirely too soft. Is everything actually okay at your home? I heard all about that intense crying prayer thing at First Bethany Church. She said it so gently, with such genuine concern in her eyes, which honestly made the deep humiliation 1,000 times worse. Then came the one devastating phone call that violently stopped my heart entirely cold inside my chest. It was a normal Wednesday afternoon, exactly at 2:15 p.m. My glowing phone rang shrilly in my scrub pocket. The caller ID flashed brightly. Layla's elementary school. I answered immediately, my pulse already hammering a frantic rhythm. The front desk coordinator was on the line. Her voice was highly professional, but incredibly careful and tight with raw tension. "Miss Prescott," she started, her volume instantly dropping down to a harsh, terrified whisper. "We didn't just receive a standard complaint email today. They aggressively copied the entire State Department of Child Protective Services on the message." The bustling hospital parking lot around me suddenly went dead silent. They specifically used the legal words highly unstable home environment and active psychiatric break, she continued, her voice shaking slightly over the phone line. "Audrey, I am so incredibly sorry, but by state law we officially have to open a formal file on your daughter." I was standing frozen in the bright afternoon sun. Dozens of happy birds were singing loudly in the green trees above my car, completely oblivious to the fact that someone had just maliciously summoned CPS directly to my innocent 7-year-old's elementary school. "Who sent it?" I managed to ask, my throat entirely locking up with pure terror. "It was completely anonymous, ma'am," the coordinator whispered sadly. "Anonymous. No printed name whatsoever. Anonymous. No signed name," but I instantly knew the highly specific vocabulary. Concerned, emotional well-being, unstable environment, psychiatric break. I have been listening to those exact, weaponized words my entire 31 years on this earth, always spoken smoothly in my mother's calm voice, always perfectly wrapped up in my mother's flawless, loving smile. I sat alone in my sweltering car for 15 agonizing minutes after I finally hung up the phone. Both hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned pure white. The engine remained dead off. My stomach had completely plummeted straight through the floorboards. A formal state file, open specifically on my tiny innocent daughter. This brutal attack wasn't just about forcing me to quietly come back to their tense Saturday dinners anymore. This was no longer about simple control or public image. This was entirely about Layla. It was about violently controlling the public narrative around Layla. It was about aggressively deciding exactly who held the absolute power to write the story of my child's life. That was the exact, horrifying moment I finally understood the brutal truth in my bones. This entire nightmare was never ever about a family's deep love. This was entirely about sick, twisted control. And I was rapidly running out of dark places to hide my daughter. By early May, I urgently invited Delilah over to my apartment immediately after Layla was safely tucked into her bed for the night. Delilah sat silently across from me at the small kitchen table, staring intently at the glowing screen between us. My silver laptop was wide open, clearly displaying 5 distinct, heavily loaded digital folders right on the main desktop. Dad_Miles, Brianna_DUI, Mom_DATT, GoFundMe_fraud, Church_fundraiser. "I am going to carefully make exactly one video," I told her, my voice incredibly flat and completely devoid of any emotion. "Just one single video. And I am going to say absolutely everything out loud." Delilah slowly set down her hot coffee mug, her eyes wide. "Audrey, are you entirely sure about this? This isn't just stupid, fleeting Instagram drama. This is your actual blood family. Once you do this, you can never, ever go back." They completely stopped being my safe safety net the exact moment they cheerfully turned my deepest pain into cheap internet content and my innocent daughter into a disposable prop. I replied coldly. She closely studied my hardened face for a long, heavy moment under the harsh kitchen light. Whatever dark resolve she saw burning there finally made her nod in agreement. We meticulously planned every single second of it. The final video would be incredibly short, definitely under 20 minutes long. It would be entirely calm, highly factual, and completely free of any screaming, angry shouting, or ugly dramatic tears. Absolutely no wild accusations that I could not immediately support with hard, undeniable proof. I calmly explained the exact strategy to her. "I will clearly show the public county court record for the massive DUI, right alongside the original, signed breathalyzer calibration log that Chloe bravely gave me. I will show the disgusting GoFundMe receipt totals. I will show the 3 glaring odometer photos from Dad's truck. I will show the public Facebook page that literally anyone with a basic internet connection can easily find right now. And I will casually mention the massive credit card statement without explicitly reading the specific account numbers on camera to avoid legal trouble. What about the horrible fake prayer stunt at the church? Delilah asked quietly. I have your clear time-stamped screenshots of Brianna's live stream, I answered firmly. The one where she is actively checking her live viewer count while crying. I will absolutely show it. And if they dare try to come after me legally in court, absolutely everything I am saying out loud is either already public state record or my own lived experience. I am not wildly guessing. I am not legally diagnosing anyone. I am simply telling my side of the story. Delilah slowly pulled out her own heavy laptop from her bag. Okay, I can professionally edit the raw footage for you. Clean up the background audio. Make simple, sharp cuts. Absolutely nothing fancy or overly produced. Good, I nodded. I absolutely do not want it to look fancy. I want it to be crystal clear. She looked up at me, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. When exactly do you want to drop it? Right after the 4th of July holiday weekend, I decided instantly. Let them happily have exactly one more sunny Sunday afternoon sitting around their perfect table, completely pretending everything is perfectly fine in their perfect world. I gently closed my silver laptop with a soft click. Down the dark hallway, clearly echoing through Layla's slightly cracked bedroom door, I heard the faint, soothing hum of her white noise sound machine. It was playing gentle ocean waves, the exact peaceful setting she always picked out herself. The first Monday right after the 4th of July, that was the firm date. Exactly 8 grueling months to the absolute day since that devastating Thanksgiving Eve. That was long enough for my toxic family to arrogantly think I had finally given up entirely, and it was exactly long enough for me to finally know in my bones that I absolutely hadn't. I was about to strike the final match, but I didn't realize they were already smelling the thick smoke, and they were already loading their guns to fire first. Monday morning finally arrived, the 2nd week of July. Exactly 8 heavy months to the day since my entire world collapsed on Thanksgiving Eve. I drove Layla to her elementary school, the summer air already thick and warm through the open windows. At the busy drop-off door, I knelt down on the sidewalk and kissed her soft forehead. Have a wonderful day, my sweet Layla bug. She smiled brightly, adjusting the straps of her green dinosaur backpack. You too, Mommy. I slowly walked back to my parked car and sat alone in the quiet driver's seat. I pulled my glowing phone from my scrub pocket. The finished video was already fully uploaded, currently set to private. The bold title read, My name is Audrey Prescott. 8 months ago, my toxic family secretly filmed my absolute worst moment and happily made it public entertainment. This is my honest response. My sweating thumb hovered over the bright blue publish button. The school parking lot was incredibly quiet. A big yellow bus slowly pulled away down the street. A tiny robin landed softly on the metal hood of the car right next to mine. This is it, I thought, closing my eyes. There is absolutely no going backward after today. My racing heart was hammering against my tight ribs so hard and so fast I could actually hear the violent thumping echoing inside my own ears. My cold hands were shaking uncontrollably. This wasn't peace. This was an absolute declaration of war. I took one massive breath and firmly pressed the button. For the first agonizing 45 minutes, absolutely nothing explosive happened. Just 60 quiet views. Delilah watched it. A few close coworkers clicked the link. Some old friends from high school. I numbly drove to the busy hospital, swiped my plastic badge, and officially started my long nursing shift. But by 9:30 a.m., the tiny spark finally caught dry wood. Someone anonymously shared my direct link right into the massive Harrison Community Facebook group. 400 instant views. Then someone else boldly posted it directly onto the First Bethany Church members page. 1,000 views. By noon it hit 4,000. By 2 p.m., 14,000 local people were actively watching my truth. By the time I finally clocked out at exactly 5 p.m., the massive view count had exploded to 52,000. I purposely did not check my buzzing phone once during my entire grueling shift. I carefully changed bloody bandages, I meticulously took patient vitals. I gently held a terrified elderly man's frail hand while he nervously waited for his difficult test results. I simply did my healing job perfectly, while my digital ghost actively burned my family's fake reputation straight to the ground. In the quiet break room around 4:30 p.m., Martha found me silently refilling my plastic water bottle. Our tough charge nurse didn't mention the shocking viral video directly. She didn't have to. She simply walked over and placed a warm, incredibly heavy hand gently on my tense shoulder. "Audrey, whatever happens next out there," she said, her voice thick with fierce, unspoken loyalty, "you absolutely have my official letter of recommendation. I have supervised nurses for 20 years and I have never once written one. I mean that." I slowly nodded, my throat suddenly too tight to form words. That quiet support meant more to me than a million empty internet likes ever could. At 8 p.m., I finally arrived safely home. I fed Layla, read her a happy story, and tucked her warmly into bed. Only then did I sit at my dark kitchen table and finally flip over my glowing phone. 16 missed calls. They were all frantically coming from just 3 specific numbers. Mom, Dad, Brianna, let them panic, I thought coldly. I didn't answer a single one. I simply set the heavy phone face down on my wooden nightstand. The raw truth was finally out of its cage. Now it was going to do the brutal work for me. Let me tell you exactly what I calmly said in that explosive video, because you deserve to clearly hear it the exact same way my hometown did. I sat rigidly at my small kitchen table, the camera perfectly placed at eye level, and I started incredibly simple. My name is Audrey Prescott. I am a dedicated registered nurse and a proud single mother. On Thanksgiving Eve, my older sister intentionally set up her hidden phone camera on the kitchen spice shelf right before family dinner started. This brutal recording wasn't a spontaneous accident. This was highly planned internet content. I clearly showed the original video's cruel thumbnail right on the screen. I highlighted the mocking caption. I showed Mom's disgusting public comment. I showed Dad's silent approving thumbs up. Then, I smoothly moved my target directly to Brianna. My perfect sister was legally arrested for a massive DUI exactly 3 years ago. Her blood alcohol level was an incredibly dangerous 0.16. The criminal case was magically dismissed. The specific arresting officer works directly under County Sheriff Lawrence Dawson, who happens to be our father's closest, oldest friend for over 35 years. I displayed the public state record. The exact legal case number was perfectly visible on the screen. Then, I slowly held up the missing calibration log, the exact hidden evidence. I bravely named Chloe as my direct verified source. I held that damning printout up to the camera lens for 15 solid seconds so everyone could read the dark ink. Then, I gently set it down. Next, I aimed at my father. My dad leaves the house every single other weekend, claiming he goes fishing. The local lake is exactly 15 miles away. Yet, his truck odometer consistently logs 310 miles every single trip. I clearly showed the 3 time-stamped dashboard photos. I finally found out exactly where he goes. I displayed Madeline's completely public social media profile, the sunny porch swing, the little boy with my father's eyes, the typed caption, "I am absolutely not naming anyone who didn't actively choose to be public today," I stated evenly. But this specific woman happily posts beautiful photos of my supposedly married father with her young son every other Sunday, going back for 9 solid years. Finally, I turned my sights on my mother. My mother publicly commented on the viral video of me violently crying, happily telling 3 million total strangers that I desperately needed to change my life. My mother dramatically organized a highly public weeping prayer at our local church, calling me a lost, troubled soul. Yet my mother secretly has $52,000 in hidden credit card debt that my retired father absolutely does not know about. For my final strike, I showed the disgusting GoFundMe page. I showed the specific $8,500 that Brianna had illegally raised under the fake guise of funding my emergency psychiatric care, money that went entirely straight to buying a chunky rose gold Majesty designer bracelet. I paused, taking a slow breath, and looked dead into the camera lens. I am not asking a single person out there to punish my family today. I am simply asking them to finally stop punishing me. And then, right at the very end, my voice dropped to pure steel. "Brianna, take Layla's photo down right now. That is absolutely not a request." I didn't raise my voice a single time. I didn't shed a single tear. I want to be incredibly honest with you about something dark. The exact moment I firmly pressed post on that explosive video, I did not feel any glorious, warm satisfaction. I actually felt physically nauseous, because I knew deep in my bones that this was a massive burning bridge entirely collapsing into the deep river. There was absolutely no coming back to them after this, ever. So, let me stop and ask you directly. In my painful situation, would you have bravely posted that exact video, or would you have handled the abuse entirely differently? I genuinely want to know your thoughts. Tell me down in the comments. And if you are still sitting here listening to my voice, please hit that like button right now, because the absolute, world-shattering chaos that violently erupted over the next 72 hours is the terrifying part of this dark story I still obsessively think about every single day. 24 hours after I clicked publish, my video blasted past 210,000 views. It wasn't just a local scandal anymore. It was a roaring digital wildfire. It had been aggressively shared across 4 separate Harrison area community groups. The public comment section became an absolute war zone. Half of my hometown viciously defended my parents, clutching their pearls. The other half finally typed out what they had apparently been whispering in the grocery aisles for years. "I always knew something was deeply wrong inside that house," one neighbor wrote. "That weeping prayer stunt at First Bethany felt entirely gross to me too. I am so glad someone finally exposed it." My older sister was the very first to scramble. Brianna frantically posted a typed story at 8 a.m. sharp. "My sister is completely lying for attention. This is illegal defamation." Exactly 30 minutes later, she panicked and deleted it. She quickly reposted. No official comment at this time. Then, she deleted that cowardice too. By mid-morning, her entire sparkling social media page went entirely dark. She is suffocating in the exact same spotlight she used to burn me, I thought, watching the screen refresh. Mom furiously called my cell phone 8 separate times before noon. I let every single ring echo into the silent kitchen. Her final voicemail arrived at 1:12 p.m. When I listened to it, her voice violently shook. This wasn't the composed, beautiful grief she practiced for her church audience. This was entirely different. This was raw, unhinged fear. "You have absolutely no right to do this to us," she shrieked into the receiver. "That private credit card is my personal business. You take that disgusting video down right now, Audrey." 3 frantic sentences. "No, I love you. No, please. Let us sit down and talk." Just the harsh, ugly sound of a desperate woman rapidly losing control of the one fragile thing she built her entire existence upon. The flawless story other gullible people believed about her. Dad sent exactly 1 text message. 2 hollow words. "Audrey, please." There was zero denial. No rambling explanation. Not even a simple question mark. It was just the flattest, most exhausted plea I had ever read from a hollow man who had spent 65 years aggressively avoiding hard conversations. A lifetime of covering up abuse, reduced to 2 pathetic words, I realized, swiping the notification away. At the busy hospital, the waiting room television was tuned to the local morning news. They hadn't picked up the messy scandal yet, but stepping into the crowded break room, the heavy tension was thick enough to slice with a scalpel. Every single nurse on my floor had already watched it. Nobody dared say a word directly to my face. From across the bustling nursing station, Martha simply caught my eye and gave me one firm, approving nod. "That is enough," I told myself. "I don't need a parade. I just need to survive." Brianna tried to call me at 9 p.m. Her glowing name lit up my dark nightstand. I sat on the edge of my bed and calmly watched it ring until the screen finally turned black. 72 hours. That is exactly all the time it takes for the grand, towering architecture of a fake family's public image to completely collapse into dust. Brianna absorbed the very first massive blow. The prestigious real estate office where she worked part-time, Harding and Knox, unceremoniously fired her on Wednesday morning. The official polite reason on paper was conduct unbecoming of a firm representative. But the brutal, real reason arrived through Delilah's fast grapevine by lunchtime, when the hidden DUI record went completely public. The firm's wealthiest client, a powerful developer with incredibly close financial ties to Sheriff Dawson's corrupt office, called the managing partner directly. "Clean up this embarrassing mess immediately or lose my $1 million listing." Brianna was the disposable mess they quickly swept out the back door. The dark irony was certainly not lost on me. The exact same corrupt police connection that magically made her drunk driving charge disappear was the exact weapon that made her sudden unemployment absolutely inevitable. Her polished shield had instantly transformed into a deadly sword. Within a few short hours, GoFundMe officially froze Brianna's banking account, launching an active criminal fraud investigation. By Thursday afternoon, my sister finally deleted the humiliating Thanksgiving video, 3.2 million stolen views, permanently erased. But it was far too late. The footage had already been mirrored onto dozens of other channels. Harsh screenshots circulated in literally every group chat in our zip code. She quickly removed Layla's stolen photo too. There was no public statement, no tearful apology video, just a highly panicked, quiet digital deletion. It was the frantic equivalent of a criminal scrubbing blood off a floor right before the police kicked the door down. Her subscriber count violently hemorrhaged, 15,000 loyal followers on Tuesday. By Friday evening, she had plummeted to 5,000. Thousands of angry comments flooded her remaining cooking posts, uploading vicious screenshots of her own original, cruel caption. The family disappointment finally cracked. Those exact 6 words now followed her everywhere like a permanent, ugly tattoo. Friday night, I was sitting barefoot on Layla's soft bedroom rug, peacefully building a plastic Lego house with her. I suddenly looked down and noticed my hands were completely still. There was no anxious tremor, no hidden tightening tension in my jaw. For the very first time in 8 grueling months, my exhausted body wasn't bracing for a violent impact. "Mommy, this yellow one is the kitchen," Layla chirped, proudly pressing a bright brick into place. "It is absolutely perfect," I told her softly, and I deeply meant it about much more than the toy house. I didn't feel jumping joy. I felt the specific, incredibly heavy relief of a tired prisoner who had finally stopped carrying someone else's dirty lies. Sunday morning arrived. 6 days after my truth went live, Joyce proudly walked through the heavy wooden doors of First Bethany Church the exact same way she had done for 35 years. Her floral dress was flawlessly pressed, her leather Bible clutched tightly, her bright smile locked and ready. But this specific Sunday, absolutely nobody rushed to greet her in the bustling lobby. Pastor Richard Morgan stood sternly at the tall wooden pulpit. Before the choir sang the opening hymn, before the silver offering plates were ever passed around, he unfolded a crisp piece of paper. His deep voice was unwavering. His sharp eyes slowly swept across the packed room. "This holy church is firmly built on honesty and absolute accountability," he announced into the microphone. "We will never serve as a convenient stage for anyone's fake performance. If you have been deeply dishonest with this loving community, the only acceptable path forward is true repentance, not cheap reputation management." He did not say her name aloud. He absolutely did not need to. Joyce sat rigidly in the 4th row. The cushioned seats directly on either side of her remained painfully, glaringly empty for the entire hour-long service. Valerie, the vicious PTA mother who had cruelly told me at the grocery store to isolate my child, sat 2 rows up. Valerie stared straight ahead, her hands tightly folded, her jaw locked in ice. She refused to even glance backward. After the final closing prayer echoed through the sanctuary, my mother walked out to her car completely alone. No one stopped to chat. No one offered a warm hug. For 3.5 decades, she had proudly owned all the social currency of that massive congregation. This morning, her bank account was entirely bankrupt. She drove back to her quiet house, pulled into the concrete driveway, and walked through the front door. She found George sitting hunched over the kitchen table. His pale face looked 15 years older than it did on Thanksgiving. Resting open on the table was his glowing laptop. Pulled up bright on the screen was Madeline Brooks's public social media page. The sunny porch swing photo. "Sunday morning with my boys." George slowly looked up at his wife. "Joyce, I can explain everything." Joyce stared blankly at the bright screen. The little boy sitting happily in the photo had George's exact square jaw. He had George's distinct dark eyes. "How long?" she whispered, the remaining color draining from her face. 9 years. I wasn't standing there when the violent explosion finally happened, but Delilah heard all the gritty details from the next-door neighbor, old Mrs. Parker, who has lived directly beside my parents since before I was born. She said the vicious, window-rattling shouting lasted until 3 o'clock in the morning. For the very first time in her entire controlling life, Joyce Prescott could not spin the narrative. Day 7 dawned. I received 3 final phone calls, 3 entirely separate, pathetic versions of raw desperation. Brianna called first. She was sobbing heavily into the phone. Real, ugly crying, not the pretty kind she carefully performs for a camera lens. "Audrey, I was fired from my job," she wailed. "GoFundMe is legally demanding all the money back. I can't even make my rent this month. Please, I am begging you, take the video down. I will do absolutely anything. I will publicly apologize to you. I let her ramble until she ran out of breath. Then I spoke with ice in my veins. "You filmed me at my absolute lowest point and made my pain your entertainment. You happily stole money from kind strangers using my face. I simply told the factual truth at my calmest moment. The massive difference between us, Brianna, is that my video was actually true." Silence on the line, then a sharp click. Mom called right at 5 p.m. Her tone was pure, frozen venom. There were no tears this time. Tears are only useful when you have a gullible audience to manipulate. "You have completely destroyed this entire family," she hissed into the receiver. "Are you finally happy now?" I was standing casually at my kitchen counter, calmly slicing a crisp green apple for Layla's after-school snack. The sharp knife in my hand was perfectly steady. "I didn't destroy this family, Mom," I replied evenly. "I just finally stopped covering up the rot for you." She slammed the phone down. I smoothly finished slicing the apple, added a scoop of creamy peanut butter, and called Layla to the table. Dad called last. It was 10:15 at night. Layla was fast asleep. His weak voice sounded exactly like crushed gravel sitting at the dry bottom of an empty riverbed. "Audrey, please," he begged, his breathing ragged. "I know I messed up horribly, but Madeline, the innocent boy, they really don't deserve this public nightmare." I closed my tired eyes. A deep hollow ache spread through my chest. "You are absolutely right, Dad. They don't deserve it." A long, heavy pause stretched between us. He was desperately waiting for the but. "And neither did I whispered. I ended the call. I gently placed the phone down on the cool counter. I walked over and stood quietly at the glass window. Outside in the dark, tiny fireflies pulsed softly across the humid backyard. Layla's empty swing set sat perfectly motionless in the quiet night. I learned much later from Delilah that George wasn't terrified because of me. He was terrified because Madeline had watched my viral video too. Madeline didn't even know a woman named Joyce existed. For 9 long years, my father had sworn to her he was a lonely, divorced man. The ultimate collision of his 2 secret worlds was finally here, and absolutely no one was going to survive the blast. 3 weeks after my digital confession, the swirling dust finally settled into highly measurable, devastating wreckage. My older sister, now completely unemployed, watched her precious internet channel bleed out. Her follower count rapidly plummeted down to 3,100. That hidden DUI record, now completely public knowledge, was quickly snatched up by the Harrison Globe's online blotter column. A local investigative reporter actively called the sheriff's office, demanding a statement. Sheriff Dawson issued a highly defensive 3-line email claiming proper procedure, but the angry county board of supervisors instantly announced a formal ethics inquiry into the missing calibration logs. Brianna desperately needed an expensive defense lawyer. Brianna could absolutely not afford one. Joyce was unceremoniously removed from the elite church organizing committee by a quiet, unanimous vote. Her exclusive women's fellowship circle lost 14 of its 20 wealthy members in just 21 days. It didn't happen with dramatic screaming. It happened slowly. One by one, women simply stopped returning her desperate phone calls. The $52,000 secret debt was now common knowledge shared between Joyce, George, and literally anyone who had clicked my link. George officially filed for legal separation the very next Thursday. Madeline abruptly ended their secret 9-year relationship the exact morning she watched my footage. She bravely told him through her sister, because she utterly refused to take his frantic calls, that she absolutely did not sign up to be a hidden, shameful secret. Joyce refused to speak a single word to him. My father silently packed his bags and moved into a cramped, single-wide trailer at Pinewood Park on the dusty edge of town. The innocent 8-year-old boy in Carter now tragically had 2 completely broken parents who were both brutally betrayed by the exact same selfish man. Brianna tried one final, pathetic move. She filmed a desperate clip titled "My Truth," sitting in her parked car, dark mascara heavily smudged, her voice intentionally breaking for the camera. She uploaded it at 1 o'clock in the morning. By sunrise, the comment section was entirely flooded with thousands of vicious screenshots of her own original Thanksgiving caption. The family disappointment finally cracked. The cruel words were violently thrown right back at her like a heavy boomerang. She deleted the humiliating post in under 5 hours. I didn't smile. You do not celebrate a massive explosion. You just stand far back from the roaring flames and pray the shattered pieces land somewhere you can actually survive. I am not going to pretend this entire town threw me a glorious parade. Some judgmental people at First Bethany openly stated I cruelly aired dirty laundry. That is just not Christian. One angry woman typed in the Harrison Community Facebook group. Private family business stays inside the family. 22 people liked that ignorant comment. I painfully counted every single one, because I am still human. A few cautious coworkers kept a wide distance from me in the hallways. It wasn't hostile, it was just the careful neutrality of fearful people who desperately didn't want to pick a losing side. I completely understood. In a tiny town, picking sides has brutal consequences. At the busy grocery store, because absolutely everything in Harrison happens between the food aisles, an older woman I didn't even recognize stopped my cart near the fresh produce. She was maybe 75, wearing thick glasses on a beaded chain, radiating firm, undeniable energy. "You really didn't have to do all that so publicly," she stated firmly. I met her sharp gaze without blinking. "Ma'am, they gladly made my mental breakdown public first. I simply responded. She held my steady eyes for a long, tense moment. Then she gave a slow nod. It wasn't full agreement exactly. It was more like deep, grudging respect. She turned and walked away. There were other, much softer moments too. Martha found me in the back supply room restocking latex gloves. I have supervised nurses for 15 years, she stated clearly. You are easily one of the absolute best I have ever had. A viral scandal hasn't changed that fact. She gently squeezed my arm once and left the room. The hospital administration officially closed their fake complaint file. Child Protective Services completely dropped their anonymous, terrifying inquiry. Insufficient basis. Those two beautiful words meant infinitely more to my healing heart than 4,000 internet comments ever could. Delilah texted me late one exhausted night. Some foolish people will always blame the brave one who told the truth instead of the cowards who lied. That says absolutely everything about their character and nothing about yours. I permanently saved that sweet message. I will read it again on my hardest days. I didn't need the entire town to love me. I never actually did. I just desperately needed the truth to finally exist somewhere other than trapped inside my own burning chest. But there was still exactly one massive, heartbreaking phone call I haven't told you about yet, and it came from the absolute last person on earth I ever expected to hear from. Week 4. My cell phone rang loudly from an unknown number. The glowing screen displayed an area code from Carter, the neighboring county. I almost let it go straight to voicemail, but sheer instinct, or maybe just bone-deep exhaustion, made me swipe answer. Hi, a woman's voice. It was incredibly quiet, highly careful, sounding like she had nervously rehearsed this exact opening a dozen times in her mirror. My name is Madeline. I think you already know exactly who I am. I slowly sat down at my wooden kitchen table. I do. She didn't sob. She didn't yell in anger. She simply told me what I had already deeply suspected but couldn't legally prove. He swore to me his angry wife left him 12 years ago. He promised me you and your sister cruelly refused to speak to him. He said he was entirely alone, a shaky, sharp breath over the line. 9 long years, Audrey. I built my entire world around a hollow man who simply does not exist. I listened intently. I didn't interrupt her pain. I didn't bother saying anything nasty about my father. He had already done enough of that destructive work himself. I am so incredibly sorry you were viciously lied to, I told her gently. You and your sweet son absolutely did not deserve that. Silence hung between us. Then, she spoke very softly. Neither did you. She confessed one final thing before we finally hung up. Something that hit my bruised heart far harder than the rest of the scandal. George had actually told Madeline about me, but not the honest truth. He firmly told her I was the unhinged problem child. The highly difficult, dramatic one. The exact reason he simply couldn't bring his new family around his old town. Even in his hidden secret life, 2.5 hours away in a sunny house I have never even seen, my cowardly father actively used me as his convenient excuse. I was the human shield for both of his fake families. The call lasted exactly 10 minutes. We didn't falsely promise to stay in touch. We didn't politely exchange pleasantries or make fake lunch plans. We are absolutely not friends. We are just 2 wounded women who were ruthlessly used by the exact same selfish man to keep 2 entirely different, massive lies breathing. I gently hung up the phone. I calmly washed my dirty dishes. I happily picked Layla up from school. We got double scoop ice cream at the Bright Parlor on Mercer Street. Some heavy truths do not need a dramatic follow-up. They just desperately need to be spoken out loud. 2 months after the explosive video, I typed out 3 final text messages, one to each of them. They were short, crystal clear, and written right at my kitchen table while Layla happily colored a picture beside me. To Brianna, I do not hate you, but I will never trust you again. Do not contact me. Do not post anything about me. Never mention Layla. If that boundary changes someday, it will be my choice, not yours. To Mom, I deeply loved the flawless version of you I foolishly thought existed, but I cannot have any relationship with a person who uses holy prayer as a weapon and a mother's love as leverage. I genuinely hope you get professional help with the crushing debt. I mean that. To Dad, you currently have a young son who desperately needs a father who actually shows up honestly. Be that brave man for him. You certainly weren't for me. I didn't expect any heartfelt responses. I didn't receive any. That exact same week, I permanently revoked Brianna's digital access to the shared family photo album. I officially changed my cell phone number. I physically replaced the metal lock on my apartment door because Mom still had a spare silver key from when she helped me move in 3 years ago. I formally updated Layla's strict school pickup list. Only me and Delilah are allowed. Small, highly practical steps. The specific kind of healthy boundaries that don't make any loud noise. They just finally make safe space. A week later, Delilah noticed a tiny detail online. Brianna had quietly unblocked me on her social media. Not to lovingly reconnect. She was obsessively checking, desperately scanning my page just to see if I had posted any fresh updates. Monitoring me was pure force of habit. The greedy content creator inside her simply couldn't stop watching. I blocked her back. One simple tap. Done. Layla looked up from her bright coloring book. "Who was that on your phone, Mommy?" "Nobody important, baby," I smiled. "Just doing some cleaning up." She happily went back to her beautiful drawing. A tall house with a bright yellow door and a huge tree with purple leaves. A colorful world that makes perfect sense to her innocent mind. I am actively building that safe world for her. One sturdy lock, one firm boundary, one quiet, peaceful evening at a time. 4 months after the digital explosion, fall gracefully arrived. The crisp outdoor air smelled warmly like burning wood smoke and fresh school supplies. Layla excitedly started 2nd grade. She proudly picked out her own brand new backpack. It was bright green and covered in roaring dinosaurs, because Layla has never once cared about what society expects a little girl to like. We successfully moved into a spacious 2-bedroom apartment on Beacon Street, sitting much closer to the hospital. I proudly paid for it through grueling overtime shifts. Not a massive lawsuit settlement, not a lucky windfall, just honest 12-hour nursing shifts and incredibly careful budgeting. Layla finally has her very own bedroom for the first time ever. She meticulously arranged her fuzzy stuffed animals by size on the wide windowsill, and seriously told me it was their official morning meeting. Delilah comes over every single Friday night. We try cooking something entirely new each week. Last week was zesty lemon chicken. This week she is stubbornly insisting on baking homemade pizza. Layla aggressively rolls the sticky dough with both tiny fists and joyfully calls it punching bread. One rainy afternoon at the bustling hospital, Martha pulled me aside in the hallway. She was smiling in a genuine, warm way I rarely see from her. The kind of smile that actually reaches her tired eyes. The sick patient in room 5 specifically asked for the brave nurse from YouTube to start his IV. "Just thought you'd want to know." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. The joyful sound surprised both of us. My quiet video currently sits at exactly 940,000 views. I never recorded another one. I absolutely did not build a lucrative channel. I refused to monetize the ugly family scandal or cheaply brand myself as a trendy survivor influencer. One video, one undeniable truth. That was absolutely enough. One chilly evening, Layla was happily drawing at the table while I steadily chopped white onions for dinner. "Mommy, is Aunt Brianna coming over for Thanksgiving this year?" I gently set down the sharp knife. I looked deeply into my daughter's sweet face. It was highly serious, completely open, and patiently waiting for an honest answer. "No, baby," I said softly, "but Aunt Delilah is coming over, and she is bringing a huge pie." Layla carefully considered this new information. "Okay," she nodded happily. "I really like Delilah's pie. I occasionally drive past my old parents' house now. Not intentionally. The town of Harrison is simply too small to avoid it completely. Last month, a stark white for sale sign abruptly appeared staked into the front yard grass. I didn't even slow my car down. I just kept my eyes on the road and kept driving forward. I am not telling you this dark story so you will rush out and aggressively confront your own toxic relatives. Every single family situation is entirely different. Some broken families can actually be beautifully repaired with hard work. Mine simply couldn't. And I have finally made deep peace with that harsh reality. Not the fake kind of peace that feels perfectly good, but the real kind of peace that finally lets you sleep soundly through the night. If I have learned absolutely anything from this waking nightmare, it is exactly this. Firm boundaries are absolutely not a punishment. Boundaries are simply the clear, protective line where your own human dignity finally begins. They are you standing tall, saying clearly without ever needing to shout, "This is exactly where my pain ends and where you begin. You do not ever get to cross this line again." For 31 grueling years, my forced silence was the thick mortar that held their fake, perfect walls together. My agonizing tears at Thanksgiving, my forced, polite smile at tense Saturday dinners, my pathetic willingness to quietly sit in the wobbling wooden chair and pretend the homemade food I brought actually mattered to them. All of it, exhausting, free emotional labor in absolute service of someone else's fake public image. When I finally stopped freely providing that heavy labor, Their fake walls instantly came crashing down. Not because I maliciously swung a heavy sledgehammer, simply because I peacefully walked away, and their fragile structure absolutely couldn't stand up without me trapped inside it. If you are currently trapped inside a family where your forced silence actively keeps their dark secrets safe, I want you to know something vital. You absolutely do not owe them that silence. Not because they are inherently evil people, not because they deserve brutal punishment, but simply because you deserve to live entirely in the bright truth. Even when the glaring truth is incredibly ugly and highly inconvenient, and makes your Thanksgiving table much, much smaller. My dining table only seats 2 people now, just me and Layla. On Friday nights, it seats exactly 3 when Delilah brings her famous pie. It is a very small wooden table. It actually wobbles a tiny bit on the left side, but every single chair pulled up to it is entirely mine. My name is Audrey. I am 31 years old. I am a registered nurse. I am a fiercely proud mom, and for the very first time in my entire life, I am absolutely not the family disappointment. I am just me. If Audrey's journey through the wreckage of betrayal toward a life built on her own terms resonated with you, I invite you to become a part of our community. Truth is often quiet, but it is the only thing that can truly set us free. If you connected with the raw honesty of this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It's the best way to stay connected as we continue to share more powerful, real-life narratives that refuse to stay in the shadows. Thank you for listening, for understanding, and for standing with me until the very end. I'll see you next time.